Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host, meteorologist DT from Weather Risk, the commander of chaos, the colonel of confusion, your captain of catastrophe. We got some hurricane activity, tropical storm activity to talk about. So we take a break during late July and August with the weather videos, but we're back in now here for a little bit talking about Idalia and Franklin to some degree. One thing I want to point out is we'll probably around September, well, early September, around Labor Day next week, maybe we're going to start up with the weather videos once again as we go into the autumn season, and also have some special things planned here for the winter. All right. This is based upon the information from last night. I'm sorry about the sound. I don't know what happened, but I fixed it. I've tested it a couple of times. It looks like it's working good. And then at the end of this video, I included some updated information for this Sunday afternoon. So let's get right to it. All right. This is a satellite picture here from actually late Friday night, Saturday. You can see Saturday morning, early Sunday morning, I should say. And then this right here, this is the front that came through, finally come through here, the Mid-Atlantic and the Tennessee Valley. This was Tropical Depression 10. There was Franklin. Saturday looked pretty good. Franklin, definitely a nice swirl here, anticyclonic outflow. Not a very huge system, but definitely a hurricane. And this was Tropical Depression 10, which is now Idalia. One thing about this hurricane season, and this is true with almost all El Nino systems, all El Nino hurricane systems, what I'm trying to say. And during those seasons, you can get activity, you can get 10, 12, even 13 named storms sometimes, but you get a lot of activity which forms outside of the tropics. See this here? Now, this does not include Franklin or Tropical Depression 10, now Idalia, but you can see a lot of the systems in the tropics fell apart. See this? You had Gert, you had Dean, you had Emily. They all fell apart trying to move from west to east. They just didn't do anything. So, that's the thing. It didn't do anything. They fell apart, and that happens a lot in El Nino seasons because you have strong westerly winds blowing across the Caribbean Basin, Atlantic, and they rip the hell out of these systems. So, for example, there's a really big tropical wave that was going look on Saturday afternoon and evening, looked monstrous, moving into Southwest Africa. I don't know what's going to happen to it, but it does. We don't have to worry about this El Nino. This is what El Nino does. A lot of systems out of the tropics, subtropics, and the ones in the tropics really have trouble struggling. So now, right now, we're pretty close to normal. This was an interesting graph here. This shows the normal over since 1991, last 30 years. Here, the first named system is usually around June 20th. And the first named hurricane is around August 11th. And the first major hurricane around September 1st. So the second hurricane, which is what we have right now, this is August 26th. That was Franklin. So we're pretty close to normal so far. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that it does look like we're moving into a negative. Oh, let me get this out of here. We are moving into a negative hurricane cycle here on the Atlantic Basin. Now, right now, let me show you what I'm talking about here. So this is as of August 23rd. This is 4 days ago, right? So the green stuff here is rising air. I don't want to get very technical here because a lot of people don't understand this, but this is the European ensemble. This is a 200 millibar velocity potential anomalies right along the equator. This is the MJO. These numbers here refer to the MJO phases, phase 1, 2, 3, all the way out to 8, right along the equator. Now, the green stuff, like I said, is rising motion, and that means when you have tropical systems, they move in, and they're in the dark green area, they get a lot of lifting of the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is more favorable for tropical waves to become tropical depressions, tropical storms, and hurricanes. When you are in the orange, the yellow, the pink, or orange, whatever that color is, that represents sinking air, which suppresses tropical activity. So, go back to there, as of August 23rd, 25, there's the green in the Atlantic right here. This is the Atlantic Basin here, from 90 all the way out to 20 degrees west longitude. This is the Atlantic Basin. So right now we are in the green stuff, and sure enough, we have Tropical Depression 10, now Idalia, and Franklin, and other tropical waves are out there during the last week. It looks pretty good at one point, but as we go further in time, August 27, 29, September 1, September 3rd, September 5, September 7. Look what happens to the sinking air, which is right now it is in the eastern Pacific. You see that? And it's suppressing the activity off of Baja. What happens is this system, all the sinking air moves into the Caribbean Atlantic Basin. So by the time we get to September 1, 2, 3, we are now in sinking air in the Caribbean, the Western Atlantic Ocean, the Bahamas, and that means very unfavorable conditions for tropical systems as they come out of Africa and the tropical Atlantic. Indeed, if we look at the updated version of this, August 26th, look at this. Again, the green stuff is fading as we go forward in time, and all this brown, orange crap, red crap moves into the Atlantic Basin here. This is the Atlantic Basin right in here. So look what happens. It becomes brown, sinking air, and that means a lot of the problems once we go over to September 1 for tropical systems to develop. And of course, as we know, September 1 is actually the heart of the hurricane season. So the point here is that as we move into the heart of the hurricane season, we get into a lot of sinking air. So keep that in mind. All right, the sea surface temperatures briefly. Atlantic is very warm. Interestingly enough, the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean, the anomalies are not that warm, relatively speaking. There's a lot of warmth here from Spain, the Azores, down to off the coast of Africa, the tropical Atlantic, but not so much in the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico or the southeastern U.S. Indeed, you can see the temperature changes here in the last 2 weeks. A lot of cooling here in the Gulf of Mexico and the Bahamas. You see that? So, a lot of this is upwelling. We also had a Harold go through here a couple days ago, so they're causing some upwelling. And in fact, if you look at the sea surface temperature anomalies, even though we all know that the Gulf of Mexico, we've all seen the stories all summer long about how warm the water temperatures are in the Gulf of Mexico and the Florida Keys, and all that's true, but lately they've been cooling off. And we can see that on this image and also here. Here's the actual data. Notice it was warming up quite nicely here all the way since June. A brief dip here in late July, but for the most part, now look what's happened. It's gone from 1.35 centigrade above normal to around 0.9. So it's dropped off quite a bit here. As this is the Gulf of Mexico in general. Now, this doesn't cover the Gulf of Mexico loop current, which is, of course, always a big deal, as the tropical cyclones, when they cross a loop current, they have a tendency of undergoing significant, if not explosive, development and intensification. But as a rule, right now, the Gulf of Mexico is actually cooled off a little bit. Right, this was the front here on Friday, which coming down, the first front. You can see in New York State, Pennsylvania, Ohio Valley, and the second one behind it. The front's finally pushed through the mid-Atlantic region. And that what's driving the front is this trough. So this is Franklin here, and this is Idalia, Tropical Depression 10. Okay, now this is valid for this evening. And this came out on August 26th. This is Friday's European model. Now, the point here is that this feature here in the Pacific Northwest, this is a Rex block. See, you have an upper low here underneath the ridge. That's called a Rex block. Now, the heat dome, which was over the Midwest of the Plain States, gets pulled back west because of the Rex block. The Rex block changes the wavelength across all of North America. So it gets pulled back to the west, and that allows this trough to come southward. It is this trough which is going to pull up Idalia and also kick Franklin out to sea. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so and this is now valid for Tuesday evening, early Wednesday morning. There's the trough running from Labrador through Quebec down into the Pennsylvania and Virginia, and there's Franklin getting kicked east. But Idalia 93L, Tropical Depression 10, has come up this way, so it's going to catch the trough because it's further west. So the trough here acts as a magnet to pull it up, where for Franklin, it kicks Franklin out to sea. And what happens is eventually 93L, now Tropical Depression 10, now Idalia, passes very close or just south of Cape Hatteras underneath the ridge by the time we get to September 1st. So there we go. All right, next, let's take a look at the maps here from a couple of days ago. Now, this is the Friday GFS model, and you can see that there was Franklin and there was Idalia, and it takes it, the GFS was taking it into the Florida Panhandle near the Big Bend, or maybe near Apalachicola, maybe just to the east of that, but that's where it was taking it. And then, of course, from there, it was moving it into Georgia, then North Carolina, and this big high was to the north, and it was going to slow the system down and not allow the rain to get north of the Maryland, Pennsylvania border. It get rain into Virginia and Maryland and Delaware, maybe southern New Jersey, but no further north. Well, that trend is generally true, but the European model from Friday was different. The European model had it coming further, closer towards Tampa, towards the Big Bend area, as opposed to Apalachicola. And then that big high comes down. Look at this big early autumn like high on August 31 that forces Idalia to pass south of Hatteras. So the European was showing south of Hatteras as opposed to tracking just inland. And the HWRF, which came out, so this is, I guess, Friday, Saturday, it should say, Saturday evening. You can see here, again, bonkers, the model just going crazy. I'm not a big fan of the HWRF. I think it's a piece of crap. And it overdoes everything. Look at 940 millibars, 942 right here in the Big Bend area of Florida. Category 4 hurricane. It's possible, I just don't think it's likely. Apparently, neither does the Hurricane Center. So now, as regard to the track seems okay. I just don't think the intensification is just way off. I'm not a big fan of the intensification of the HWRF. I think it's garbage. And you can see now this is the HAFS model. This is again from Saturday afternoon, Saturday 18Z. And notice here, I don't know if you can see it. Let me call it up my marker. Right here, 956 millibars. There's Tampa. It's fairly close to Tampa. Okay, much further south. Remember the GFS is up here. The European was more towards here. That's where the European has it. So much definitely this model here, the HAFS A, is closer toward the European solution a little bit. But you can see 956 millibars. That's a respectable Category 3 hurricane. Okay, that's not nothing. So there it does have intensification here. And you can see this is the parent model from earlier. You can see this is a large version of it. There's Franklin, 943 millibars, 970 Category 1 hurricane developing into Category 2, approaching the west coast of Florida. All right, and the hurricane models were showing this nicely. Most of the hurricane models, again, because they're based off the GFS, are up in the Big Bend area. See that? Most of them are up in here. But again, as you can see, the HAFS model and the European is closer towards Tampa a little bit, just to the north of Tampa. So a little bit of discrepancy there. The GFS solutions, the hurricane model solutions, are perfectly viable. That's very possible. I think it's too far up the coast, but I could be wrong. But what they all do is they all keep it coming over Hatteras or just south. You see that? So they have picked up on the idea of the European from Friday, keeping it south of Hatteras. This was the Saturday evening update. You can see they're shaping right along the coast. Again, they have it further north up the coast of Tampa, mostly right through here. Again, that's following the GF hurricane models, which is fine. I think it's too far up the coast, but we'll see. And then this was the European model. Now, this was the Saturday midday European, and there's Franklin, 972, and there's Idalia right here, 999. Now, there's the high pressure area, so the front comes through, and what's going to happen is these two systems are going to be turned out to the Atlantic, and they could Fujiwara around each other. That is to say, spin around the Atlantic Ocean for several days as they're trying to figure out what to do. So that's a possibility down the road, something to see if that happens. And then this next slide here, this is that's the same one, sorry. There you go. And you can see now this is valid for 2 o'clock on Wednesday, August 30th, 994. Not that strong. The European was barely getting maybe the hurricane intensity before landfall, maybe. But that was based upon yesterday's initialization. So the system is clearly stronger right now. So the models are actually going up in intensification here a little bit. Not a surprise, but I think that's a low end. I think that's a little low, 994. I don't know if it's going to get to 958 like the HAFS has it, but there's room for debate in there. And then if we just blew it up a little bit here, you can see 990. There it is. And then when you enlarge a little bit, you can see there's the landfall right there. Again, up very close to Cedar Key, right in that point right here. And then it goes over, close to Savannah, just inland from Savannah, then over Charleston, and then south of Hatteras. See, there's Hatteras, well to the south of Hatteras. So it definitely turns to the right here. So not a surprise. And the reason why is because look at this Arctic high. Well, excuse me, not Arctic high. I wish. This is the autumn high. Look at this autumn high. This is like an autumn high pressure system. 1022, 1023 millibars. In Michigan, Detroit, the Eastern Great Lakes, and there is obviously protecting Virginia and Kentucky and New England from Idalia coming up the coast. So it has to turn to the right, and it's going to follow the path and the weakness in the atmosphere from Franklin. So it's definitely going to turn to the right and head out towards the Atlantic Ocean. No doubt about it. All right, here's the update for based upon the 5 o'clock information. You can clearly see that is intensified. This was from earlier today. 1922Z, which is 1522, so almost 3:30 this afternoon. And then here's the update. You can see the towers are beginning to fire up in here, and you definitely have more cyclonic circulation here. So it's definitely cranking. Now it's not moving very much. It's still location, but it's definitely developing. There's the infrared, and notice you can see the explosive convection developing here near the center a little bit. So that's nice to see more of these bands. Now you're not getting much in the northwest quadrant yet. So we'll have to see how it wraps around, but it looks like it's starting to. The recon plane did find it was upgraded to a tropical storm. It definitely is based upon these winds. So it is definitely Idalia. You can no doubt about that. Now what happens here? The GFS. This is the 12Z GFS run, so we can blow this up a little bit. There it is in the Florida northeast Gulf of Mexico. Then look where it takes it. See how far north it takes it up the coast? I don't like that idea. Let me blow this up a little bit. You can see it a little more. Again, this is the Saturday afternoon GFS 12th, August 27th here. And look where it takes it. Not by Tampa, not over here. Again, it's got it 968, something like that. If that's right, 968. And close just to the southeast of Appalachia, maybe, I don't know, Mexico Beach, maybe Destin, something like that. So, and this would probably pass over Tallahassee and up to Georgia and then, along the Carolina coast. I just think that's too far north. And the reason, again, is because of this enormous high, 1021 millibars. This is the Saturday operational GFS. So it's not going to get any further north. There's a lot of rain in North Carolina. The Carolinas in the system, but it really doesn't get north of the Virginia-North Carolina border on August 31. We could use the rain in Virginia and Maryland and Delaware and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but with this high like that, you're not going to get it. That's just out of the question. Now, here's the GFS. Again, you can see what it does. It takes it along the coast and then south of Hatteras. So there you go. And that's perfectly reasonable. I just think it has it too far north. Here is the European model. The European look much further to the east. Let me blow this up here a little bit. You can see. There we go. We blow this up a little bit. There you go. Okay, 980 millibars. Not a great system. No big shakes here, but it's definitely further closer to Tampa in this bend area here. Not here. Over here. Okay. And I happen to think that's a viable solution. So I think that's right. Okay. Meanwhile, I'll bring this send backwards. There it goes. It takes it. You can see right all over Savannah. There you go. And then up along the coast. It seems reasonable. And then south of Hatteras. Okay. And the British model, same sort of thing. The British model is a nice compromise between the European and the GFS. It's got it, not here. The European is here. The GFS is here. It's got in between. 992 millibars. Maybe a hurricane. The British model, like the European model, is not that bullish with the system. It just isn't. So we'll see. The problem here on the coast, this is from last year from Ian. I made this graphic. I'm just bringing it up again. This is the Ian graphic here, but you can just change it. Here's the central problem coming up through the Yucatan Channel, and there's the Florida coast. So it could bend anywhere and hit the coast anywhere along here because of the oblique angle. It makes it very difficult to know exactly where it's going to make landfall. Now, that being said, this was the 6Z halves model from early Sunday morning. Now you can see here 968 millibars. There's Tampa. Okay, look how close it is to the central Florida coast. Not up here at all, but it's going to look like it's passing just up the coast, making landfall north of Tampa. 968 millibars. Here's the 12Z run. What? 944. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? 944. Now, one of the differences is that this is coming up the coast further. And because it's up the coast further, it stays over the water longer, and it gets a chance to intensify more. So, this is very reasonable. 966, 968 millibars. Okay, that's fine. But it looked like it's headed for here. On the new updated run of the half A model, it's going into, as you can see, here, further up the coast. Not down here, further up the coast. And maybe that's why it intensifies more. Okay, we saw this with the half B, same sort of thing. This was the 6Z run, 951 millibars, further up the coast here. All right, and then the updated version, 936. Are you kidding me? Almost the same location, but it just that's category four hurricane, strong category four. So this is a much bigger, much bigger problem. This is really bad news for Jacksonville, Tallahassee, and Savannah if this is correct. So and so is that one. It has to be the 6Z or the 12Z. It's really bad news for those areas. So there we go. Oh, one other last thing, if you take a look at the hurricane plots, the hurricane models, in terms of their intensity, you look at Tropical Tidbits or the other sites out there, you can see that the last runs, we're seeing a lot more individual hurricane models go up to category 2, almost to category 3. I did not include that here because they're already up to 45 slides, but you can clearly see that it does that here on the latest runs. So the hurricane models are seeing more intensification as compared to the last couple of runs. We're seeing a couple of more, um, spikes into category 2, almost to category 3 status. So that's not a surprise, but it is telling me that we're getting more consensus that we have a good shot, maybe making category 2 here, or even category 3. I can't see 4 in this situation. I just can't. I'm not going to rule it out, but we'll see. Another couple more cycles here to watch and see how this thing intensifies. If this thing is really cranking Monday, afternoon, Monday evening, Tuesday morning, then maybe we could get that strong. So we'll see. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll see you on the Twitter page and on the website.